Innovators Dilemma by Professor Clayton Christensen is very good book to read because it completely changed our perspective in terms of innovation.
Welcome to Innovators Among Us, the podcast where tech meets courage, proving that innovation isn't just a strategy, it's a mindset.
Innovation has many levels. Lot of big companies which were established in their time with good profits, still they failed. So these professors tried to analyze why these companies fail, and it was not because of their managers did not do something right or stuff like that, but it was because they were just trying to please their customer at the current time, and they were did not have the vision that some disruptive new technology can change the perspective completely, and then one small startup comes in and use this technology, and boom, this old company just dies. So he explores this activities, how these new technologies can be exploited and used in innovation.
I've also saw that when you cook, then you can think the best. Why is that the case? Do you think the people in those companies that failed should have cooked more?
That's really a fun way to say that. But I think this is kind of individualistic because every scientist have their own way to, process their critical thinking. And for me, when I'm cooking, I'm really, it's kind of meditation and I'm really focused. And also in my background, I'm thinking.
When you work in the lab, is it like cooking for you, so more intuitive, or is that more like recipe followed and structured?
In the lab it's a bit different. Yeah, we have to be intuitive for sure, but in general we need to also make an experiment plan ahead, because otherwise there can be so many different direction it can fail. So it's a bit more recipe oriented, I would say. But definitely, because in the lab you see sometimes you want one experiment to go in a way and it's not going in a way, and you have to be intuitive too, still make it happen. So it's bit of mixture of recipe and intuitiveness.
Today's guest is Dr. Manisha Biswas, a medical doctor and pathologist with over 20 years of experience in clinical settings and labs, medtech, but also as a physician, which is super cool. That you work with tools like AI, genomics, digital diagnostics, and I saw you also have experience with Gen AI. And you help really build systems that bring cancer research from the lab to real patients. This transition from physician to working in medtech is what we'll focus in this episode. You also led global teams, worked in different hospitals, but also have startup experience. So you know how innovation, but also regulation works. So in short, you know how to make complex science actually work in the real world, which is what we're looking for. So super excited to have you here. Welcome today. Can you take us back to the moment when you knew, okay, now it's time to transition and change?
Changing from my career from physician to the more to the medtech. I was moving from one city to another, and I was completely a practicing physician working with patients. And I was also looking a new job in this new city, but unexpectedly got a call from a Harvard scientist. He said that he has started a company in this new city, and they are focusing on a new tool for cancer research, and they would be very happy if I can join them. I never thought that can be also use of my experience, but when he explained a bit about how it is happening, I saw it is very close to my expertise and I could contribute a lot. So I joined them.
How did that clinical background shape the way that you worked in this new position? Was there something that you had to relearn?
It was very challenging and an exciting role for me, because previously, you see, I was mostly working in the hospital or maybe in a lab where the patient comes. They have required tests which we do or we interpret, then we discuss with them. It's completely a real world setting. But now when I wanted to work with this company, it was more of both, because we were developing in one hand this tool Here we took the tissue from the patient's own tumor, and then we cultured it in our lab, and we tested different drugs to see which particular regime will be perfect for this patient. It was in the precision medicine, and this was a mixture of research as well as the clinics, because we also went through different hospital collaborators. We went through ethical committee approval to put it in early clinical testing or preclinical testing, and then we were also working with the patients, but as well as we were also working in the lab developing and improving this testing. So this was a lot of learning, and also it was because of my background, because I had the clinical background, the scientists, they didn't have it, so I could contribute a lot as well.
You mentioned a lot of stakeholders already involved into the process, like ethical committee, hospitals. Who else is there? Who do you have to involve?
I really loved this job because we had many internal and external. So in the internal, you see, there is a team of scientists, there is a team of bioinformatician, there is two clinician, me and another girl, and then there is also the business development team, who also customer research team, who are directly working with the patients or maybe the clinicians. On the other hand, for the hospitals where we were collaborating with a physician who will be the investigator for the study, and many time I was the co-investigator as well. So then we go to the administrative side, because they're the ethical committee and all the clerical staff who are also helping us to go through this administrative process. Otherwise you cannot go to the next level, to the patients. Then you are explaining to the patient, see, there is this technology, and this is, you don't have to go through any extra procedure for it, but it gives you this result. Would you like to do it or not? And so that is another stakeholder as well, most probably the most important one, I would say. It was very cross functional role, and
Did that change over time, or was it constantly this set of people working on it?
we expanded. We started in India and US, because my the mentor I talked about earlier, he was from Harvard, and he had a small office in the US and also a bigger lab in India. So we started about 25 people, and then we would grow to 120, 130 people in both locations. Obviously, with growing, they also developed a lab in the US, and then we went through all the regulations there as well, because we wanted to get the lab accredited from CAP and CLIA, and also in India the local regulation like NABL. So we got all the accreditation done. It changed a bit because of a lot of more people came in. We got a lot of new experts who helped us, so it became more dynamic.
How was it onboarding all these people to that project?
In the hospital, the leadership is kind of different than a company, because in the hospital, if a surgeon is operating and we are helping them, you have to listen to him blindly, because somebody's life is at stake, right? But here I developed also a team, two teams actually. First in India, a small team, and then in the US as well. I onboarded two more clinician, three scientists, five technologists, two bioinformaticians. They all came from different backgrounds and different languages, and very different people, but very qualified. It was very diverse team, and it was a very very good learning for me as well, because it was something, I have done learning by doing. Obviously, I got help from my other colleagues as well, but it was wonderful, I would say, because I think for any innovation or innovating team, this diversity is very, very important, because it brings the best of everyone's.
What do you think, except for diversity, is important for teams that have to drive innovation?
If you want something out of your team, you also need to hire people accordingly. It's kind of, I mean, sensitive, I would say, but I think so, because if just we refer Einstein, if you ask a fish to fly, it will always think that I cannot do anything. So I think this relationship is both ways. When you have a person, you need to understand the quality and everything, but when they are onboarded, I think as a leader or mentor, our job is to support them in everything, to get integrated, to make a culture which is supporting them without fear, so that they can bring out ideas as well, they can experiment. This experimentation culture is very important for an innovation team, and they should not be afraid that they will be replaced for some technology I'm bringing in. These things are very important, as like, the emotional intelligence, we came to learn it, I would say, because when we were working in the hospital, it's not so much, just work and that's it. But handling with very these colleagues are also very, very qualified, expert in their own field, and bringing them together is also a huge challenge for innovating teams. And when you can do it, it's really, the results is amazing.
So what I'm hearing is you feel like valuing these team members is super important, but also puzzling them together so the skills match, right? Then also creating an environment where they can act without fear. Is there something that I missed?
If people are really empowered and not afraid, then the creativity comes, and from the creativity comes all the innovation. There has to be some good idea, and then some small changes as well, and then it leads to innovation.
Creativity sometimes needs time, but in such an environment, there's high pressure to perform. A lot of people in that area are workaholics. So how do you make time for creativity?
Yeah, so this is very important part, because the daily grind is something which is we have to do, but because we also have to think about running a team, when we have it. But if it is the only thing, then nobody has space to innovate, even you ask people to do a small change, they needs time and effort for it. So I think this is very important to fix this daily chores and give people time. And that's why I think that a strategic leader would also give importance to the planning, and so that everybody has a time to breathe, and time to think. That is part of an innovation team. It's not like a tap that I open and water comes running out of it, and no scope of micromanagement here. It kills creativity, in my opinion.
Now, if you work with such an interdisciplinary team, everyone is their expert, how do you make them collaborate together? Especially when we look at data, right? Because if bioinformaticians need data, it has to be a specific format, structure, and whatnot. So how do you make sure that, for example, data gets passed very smoothly?
This is, frankly speaking, a challenge. What I have seen in my experience, I have seen conflicts, and that is quite natural that there will be conflicts. But in my experience, the best solution has been is by discussion with team members, healthy discussions, and keep people scope to speak up. There should not be any fear to render an opinion, even if it that time it may think a stupid idea, but then no idea is a stupid idea, also, like a culture that make people feel the ownership of their work.
With what data did your team work?
We had, for example, flow cytometric data coming in. We had histopathology data, and then we started developing some panels with multiplex machine, which is like different markers coming together, and then integrating all these markers with specialized softwares as well, and coming out of this, coming out to a result, yeah, stuff like that. Later, what we started using as well is the help of machine learning and other new techniques, because when we started first, we started simple. Okay, we had some parameters, we tested it, we get a result, we rendered it to the fishes, but we always work for a 2.0, and that's why later we thought that it's quite interesting that we started this using machine learning around 2017 18, which is, I would say, early, because now if you go to the LinkedIn, you see everybody is talking about AI, and everybody is using some technology. But we started working with some other companies, not completely alone, but some other bigger companies who had the resources, and they also bring their team, for example, the engineers, the software developers, because I'm not a software developer, so I can talk about the clinics, but we got more experts who also taught us, and we worked together developing some consistent result with the help of the machine learning, because we wanted to reduce the human errors and also the the load. Sometimes for few people it can be huge data, and then we take some help, it gets sorted out or make it simpler.
How hard is it to get consistent results?
See, biology is kind of different than mathematics, right? And in the clinics, what we want to know is that, okay, whether this drug will work or not work. And long time, physicians has worked like that. We try some, there are lines of drugs, there are expert committees which set them. And so we try a first line, we try, does not work, we try a second line, go like that. But when we started this idea, we thought that maybe for one individual patient it can be different, because originally the cancer was thought only originating from a or from a like a specific organ or maybe a specific type of cells. But when we got more understanding, it is seen that there are many other factors, many other cells, which we call tumor microenvironment, which is also affecting it. So thereby each patient is different. If we want to get data, we need to look at a lot of more factors. So we tried it from the clinicians and the experts, and we got good results. But for single parameters, then we wanted to also make each single parameter more refined. For example, there are some observational differences between two experts. When we are using AI, our goal was that any bias, if there is any, we want to remove it. That was one goal. Second thing is, of course, the I mentioned that resources, because sometimes it can be overwhelming amount of data, and then it's the humans can only get tired, or then maybe they are not able to give that much input, and the machine can give it very quickly a large volume of data results. And that's how we started using it to get a more consistent result.
What data amounts do you work with? Is it like gigabyte, terabyte? How large is the data that you have?
In the hospitals, still all over the world, largely people work on microscope, as you know, like they see real slides, glass slides and stuff like that, most of the people in the world. But we started using the complete digital setting. I set it up with other colleagues, and we didn't have any, we had microscope just for if any confusion, but everything was done digitally. So our slides were scanned, and the images came to our cloud, and we can log in, we can see the slides. So these data is very big, because these are images and with very high resolution, so that don't miss one cell. So we need that kind of resolution, right? So it was heavy. And also from the other for example, we also collaborated with some other people who gave us the NGS data, or some transcriptomics data, stuff like that. And yeah, they're kind of a lot.
Okay, so large data sets, it needs to be reproducible and reliable. What is about generative AI? Is that hype or hope?
We used some kind of machine learning first, right? And then we also started using more advanced models, and people are showing very, very promising results, or maybe they are talking about it. But what I saw in our practical experience is that it needs a lot of training, when we use the machine learning algorithms. But going from there to generative AI, what we see that we get the data, but we need to validate if the results we get is actually equitable to the real world or not. You see, if because it's a patient's life, it's very different from other technologies. And I talked about one health tech post I saw in the LinkedIn, and they're saying that it's very different from any other technology. So if I want to wash something in a machine, or if I want a robot to work in my house, that's a different story. Nobody is going to die if they make a mistake. Here the difference is, like, if I do not able to validate it, and I'm convinced as a physician, okay, this thing can do the job which is acceptable for our current medical standard or current regulatory standard for a patient, then it's fine. But if I cannot measure it or cannot validate it, then it's a think of worry. It's a It's a concern more for a physician than a patient, because as a physician, I know a lot about the consequences. For example, my mom, she got cancer, and then she got targeted therapy, and she got cured, completely cured. But she just know that, but she doesn't know the several consequences if that was administered or diagnosed by an AI, and if it went south, what could be the consequences. That she doesn't know, because she has not, that is not her field. Let's put it in that way. I know that. That's why my concern is more, and that's why this is definitely a very promising disruptive technology which can close a lot of gap in the resources, because lot of parts in the world you don't have so many qualified person, physicians or nurses or technologists, to serve to the patient or serve to the community. This gap can be closed by qualified AI models. But before I put it in this situation, all the stakeholders need to know that whether it is equivalent or better than a physician or a technologist or a scientist. Better already in several aspects. Sometimes it can detect some things the humans are missing. It can detect in huge volumes. Those things are there. But at the same time, if it makes a mistake, because it's generative AI, it has gathered this experience from the available data. As biology is not mathematics, so if there is a difference, if there is a difference in the anatomy of this patient, very simple example, and the AI doesn't know about it, what happens? It makes a mistake, patient dies. Who is responsible, right? So this kind of ethical considerations has to be there, and there should be extreme caution in validating these models, and that takes time. Because see, now the small companies are not even able to do it, like Google or Microsoft or these big companies. They are doing it, they are validating, they are using billions of data sets and stuff like that. But sometimes with limited resources, it may or may not available, or it may take long time to do it. It is a bit high, because it's not that tomorrow morning I wake up and everything is done by a robot or a generative AI. But it is also a hope, because it can close a lot of gaps which is not possible by the human.
I was very impressed when you mentioned that your lab data directly goes to the cloud, because I've heard from lab teams that do not have internet access in their labs. They still have written notes that they then even have to digitize. So how did that happen that you directly push your data to the cloud?
We purchased a machine which is a slide scanner, and it could scan 400 slides at a time, and that can be repeated also, because the cycle is like maybe at that time it was about 3 to 4 hours, but after that you can again use it. So it can handle big data set, and as soon as it scans it, it can send it to this cloud. And we purchased this license with Leica in such a contract that that we can access to these clouds, and we can, and that's why we can access this from anywhere in the world. So that's why it was also cool, because if I'm traveling, I can still see the slides and do it. Now in a lot of western countries who has funding, research funding, they are doing it for sure. In Germany also, and in the US for sure, they are having a lot of setups, especially the big hospitals. They are trying to completely replace this kind of real world slides, and they're completely shifting to the virtual slides. Yeah, we did it in 2017, which is kind of, I would say, still a lot of lab was just dreaming about it, and that was very cool. And from there, so it was the first step. We accustomed to see everything like that. Then we talked with the engineers, and they help us in the aspect of machine learning, and they showed us how to train these models, because they don't know what is a tumor. I know it, and I don't know exactly all their steps they needs to do. So we came together and we started developing and training these models, but that was still trainable models. But now you can see that there are more models coming which are completely, you don't need to train them. They just get the data from all over the world. They get the data and they can do everything by themselves. But I still say the validation and the ethical consideration has to.
You mentioned that you work with freelancers, with other tech companies. When and how did you decide that now you need someone external to add to the project?
We worked with Leica first, which was our first external partner a lot, because we got the machine from there. The whole digital setting was from them. And then when we said that we want to change our process a bit, to improve it with some training to your already available software, we need to see if we can develop some algorithm. Then they were very interested, and then they came to work with us. With time, we I mean, because we also had labs in the US, right? So there are a lot of educational institutes which are working on these fields. Our colleagues from there also reached out to them, and many people want to collaborate with us, and then they worked with us. And it was nice to have collaborations. Now I see that a lot of companies are starting up in this, and a lot of companies are established, and there are several FDA approval for this kind of endeavors. And even the big companies are also putting separate departments for this thing, and this is very promising, but it will take time, in my opinion, because it needs to be thorough.
When you collaborate with other people, do you have like a requirements file? Do you have kickoff meetings? How do you approach that?
We had a team, and we also worked with like cross country teams, and they would reach out to these people. We start from the kickoff, and then we also need to see the compatibility. So we sat with them, we explained a bit about what we want to do, and they said that whether they want to do it or how they want to do it.
You've built a lot of different applications already, introduced a lot of different projects. When was the first time that you saw a project actually coming from an idea stage directly to the patient and seeing the impact?
We did trial, we did big studies in Chicago, and we also did several studies in India. And there was already some patients in the US and India, were in Israel. They were interested to take this advantage. And in fact, it came to a lot of people's attention when one boy, he was suffering from a rare tumor. He was in hospice, and then they tried this technology. They provided a specific drug, their clinician, and he could come back to a better state, and he could have some, at least few quality days with his parents. He did not survive long, but he could have few better days. His parents were very, very happy, and they could. Mostly when everything fails, that time people came, because because there is no more hope. Maybe somebody said, like, their treating physician said, okay, that's it, I cannot offer you anything else, like only palliative. They wanted to do it, and we went through the proper procedure and all. Frankly speaking, I was trained physician, but I didn't know all this stuff. Okay, so I started learning stuff as well, and it's I would say that is true for many scientists. We got a kind of education, we did our experiments, we knew the mainstream studies and how to mainstream science, let's say. But then these things came, and we started learning stuff. I'm learning every day, it never stopped.
You've also seen the physician side, so when you directly work with the patient, how did you deal with all the emotional pressure also that this creates?
This is not new. That is part of the job when you take up medicine, I think. And you also get a bit trained by when you are training. I mean, when I was doing my internship with patients, and I get trained with that. And it's a sad job sometimes, I had my bad moments, like really, because when first, as a general physician, when I'm doing that is one thing, okay, that is also emotional, but it get more when you are just rendering a patient a news. It's like not a good news. I'm telling a patient, I remember, she had a breast lump, and I did an intervention, I saw it's a cancer, and had to tell her husband, and they are like, everything fine, they're healthy, he has a boy, goes to school. And I mean, it hits hard to me, at least. I don't know, I cannot tell about others, but hit hard to me. And I have a personal experience as well. I told you earlier that my mom got cancer, and that was also a turning point for me, because that time, she a lot of people said that it's nothing can be done, it was a huge tumor. And then we did a test in the lab for a specific marker, and it was positive, luckily, and there was a targeted therapy available. She was one of the first patient in India to receive this, and she was completely cured, and she's now 10 years disease free, fingers crossed. So I know both the side. I say that has enriched me as a person. I know the pain as well.
Do you also bring that experience to your team? Do you show them what it does emotionally to you, or do
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I try to not to show too much emotion, but I try to show the empathy, and I try to teach. If I'm a mentor, I try to teach that to people. I try to teach that to my daughter as well. So, because I think it's very important in this business, when you are working on something can change people's lives, it is very important. And as far as I see so far, generative AI is still lacking that. Still we need humans.
Do you feel like these emotions help with really driving you to create more innovation, to work even harder, or
Yes.
maybe even inspires you? Or do you think it's also very draining?
Absolutely. It's absolutely, because when my mom was diagnosed this, and it was really an eye opener to me, because I was still doing my residency that time. I didn't finish my specialization. And I knew that patient comes, we treat them, okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work. And this case, when several renowned physicians told me that nothing can be done, tumor reached almost till pancreas and it is irresectable. That time I decided, no, we will do the biopsy, we'll see it, and if this comes positive, there is a way. And it worked, and it was an eye opener for me that we cannot judge things too fast. And it was also the one of the biggest inspiration why I decided to do my PhD later, you see, because a lot of time the physicians are already doing clinical research, they don't pursue PhD anymore. I mean, in the US maybe a lot, but in other countries this culture is not so much. But I decided to do that because I wanted to understand the science behind it. And it has immense effect on my development and how I see a device, how I see medtech, how I see a disease and a patient, everything.
You just said we should not judge too early. You also mentioned a couple of times that critical thinking is super important. Can you give me more insights on that? What does that mean when you really put that into action?
They said nothing can be done, but it can be done. I think it's very important to keep our minds open, because in science every day there are so many innovations happening, and this can be a spark which creates in my mind that I can create things, and which can help people, which already patients are told that nothing can be done. And this is also the reason when I joined this company I talked about, and I was so much aligned with my then mentor, because it is the same thing where people were told that nothing can be done, those people came to us. And this tool could be showing that there is a drug which may help you to get some more months with your family, and what price you can put to that? Nothing. And then the value was really also, I would say that it was also opened a new business development for us, because many big pharma started coming to us before going to the trial. They came to us to test their drug in this platform, because you may know that a clinical trial takes too long and it's very expensive. So they wanted to test their drug before going to the trial, even that if it is not already working in this platform, maybe they don't want to put any more money on that. We worked with a lot of big companies, like in Europe, in the US.
After that, event, after you see both sides, did you change how you work?
I think every day I work harder, and every day I think I need 6 to 8 hours more in this day. But that's not it. It still changes you as a person. When you have something happening in your life, it changes you as a person, and you
Do you feel like
become,
these people are the better innovators?
maybe. I'm not sure. Every innovator comes from different situations and background, and everybody had their own challenges and their own solution. I think it made me really curious about things beyond what happens to the real world in the background. We see a patient. I see a patient. I give a diagnosis. My colleague in the medical oncology gives a treatment. The patient gets cured. It's a situation everybody can see, but why behind it? That curiosity, I think, was sparked from this personal event, and I think from that I always wanted to think, can I make something which will help a bit better outcome for the patient, or maybe in some small way. It does not have to be, not every innovation gets a Nobel Prize, but it does not have to be. It can be very small things. Right now, the breast cancer has surpassed the lung cancer also recently. So it is the most prevalent cancer now. And in each minute, almost a person dies of it. So if I can just do something, some small panel, some small test, which will just nothing much, maybe just cut short the diagnostic time, or just cut short some phases in intervention, that is also a help to the patient. For that particular patient, it's a huge help. Well, I like to think small changes, but still, I mean, I have become better person of for this emotional and personal event. My thinking has become more innovative.
Now, if you go back to regulation, how do you think we can make sure that when we develop something, that we already think about the regulation in the back of our mind, so that we prep already?
This is also a new learning for me, and interestingly, people say, okay, file regulatory, it's just paperwork, or just it's more hurdle. One is for the regulators. I would say that it is a huge opportunity to learn and make things safer for patients. And for the innovators, which in the other side, or the manufacturer, if I say, they keep in mind the regulations, which are very, very open. These are public information. This is published in EU from the commission. It is public in the US from FDA, and from other countries they have their own regulations. And if they keep in mind while doing it, they can produce a safer device for patients, or in any other field. They can produce a safer product, which it may seem that it is taking more time or may more money, but in long term, the product will be more successful, because more people will be interested in buying it, or more hospitals would like to have it for a machine, or maybe for a drug, more physicians will be willing to prescribe it, stuff like that. That's why I think it's very important.
I apply for a job position. What do I have to do so that you want to hire me?
I get this debate a lot. PhD scholars or scientists are complaining that, "Oh, we have done a PhD. Why people are not right away hiring us, or why they're hiring with a very less money and stuff like that." This is very important to know the real world skills, and also becoming, like, resilient and really adaptive to new things. These stuffs are important in innovation, because you see, like, when we do our PhD, we go through an exercise, how to be a scientist, how to run an experiment, how to collaborate with people. Good, very nice. But this is one set of experiment, or one scenario which is previously decided by you, and this is a limited outcome, or something like that. But from a project to a product and to a market, it's completely different. There are so many stakeholders, there are so many obstacles. Regulation is there, you need to see how it has to be marketable, how you make profit, how you give salary to your team members. A lot of stuff is there beyond the science. So if you see a person is not resilient, not adaptive, not ready to learn new things, then maybe it will not be a good match, because it's a mindset. Innovation is a mindset. It's very important that we love primary innovations, like overnight we see something, it can do something. We'll all love that, but how common is that? That is very rare. Real change come from the secondary innovations, like you see very small changes done every day by a lot of people, and then it makes a change, and then it also gives you space to think. So to be adapted to this kind of mentality, like this kind of changes, if I say, if somebody is ready to adapt in different situation, I think that would be the best thing, to have someone. And it's bilateral. I mean, I should be also open to that. I should not say, okay, you only have to change and I will not change anything. That does not work, because leadership is a two-way street, in my opinion. And if I cannot be resilient, I cannot be adaptive, then I have no right to say someone that you need to change.
What do you think is one thing that every leader should know and do in your field?
That's a very tough question. You need to lead by examples, for sure, because otherwise, only people are intelligent. There is a difference between managers and leaders, and I hate managers. Storm, I think there should be no managers. Very controversial. Managers expect you to do stuff for them, but leaders show you, and they do it themselves and show the way. And you cannot force respect. It comes, you have to earn it.
I'm just starting as a bioinformatician. What would be the advice that you would give me?
Keep your mind open to diversity, open to different opinions. Be collaborative, so that you can work with different kind of people. And when we are in a team, it's not you versus me, and everybody is trying to put their best. Sometimes it may not be 100% what I want. Most of the time it is like that, even for a leader. Never they get 100% what they want. That capability of accommodating people and collaborating and coming to a best solution, which is workable. But also, as a leader, I would say, if I see it is completely wrong, then I should be able to intervene as well, that no, it's not the right direction. But keep an open mind. There are a lot of things to learn, and we learn from each other every day.
So, to sum up, small steps for creating innovation. You do not need to get a Nobel Prize for whatever you do, because the impact is already at the patients. Even if it's small for the patient, it's really big, especially if you work in oncology or if lives are on stake. You should lead by example, create an open culture that can do mistakes. People can really think, but also have time to think and not just work 24/7. And well, the best innovators have also an emotional driver.
Even only one person is getting impacted from our conversation, positively impacted, I would think that is successful.
Thank you so much for being here.